The diner felt strangely still. The scent of sizzling bacon and rich coffee floated through the room, and thin beams of sunlight slipped between the dusty blinds, painting gold lines across the cracked vinyl seats. To most people, it was just a sleepy breakfast stop. But to a young girl named Lily, it felt like stepping into enemy territory. She rolled through the doorway in her wheelchair, her soft brown hair tucked carefully behind her ears, her sketchbook resting on her lap like a fragile shield. At just 14, she carried the heavy ache of always being the different one. In a world that didn't know how to be gentle, she settled by the window, quietly drawing while her mum moved to the counter to order pancakes. And that's when everything shifted. 3 high school boys lounging in a nearby booth spotted her. At first, it was only low whispers and crooked smiles. Then one boy got up and exaggerated a limp, dragging his leg dramatically as he strutted past her. Another pretended to push an invisible wheelchair, gripping imaginary handles and snickering under his breath. Their laughter sliced through the silence sharper than the clatter of forks and mugs. Lily bowed her head, pretending not to hear, though her shaking fingers told the truth. She had seen this game before. At school, at the park, even in grocery store aisles, cruelty always seemed to find her. Her mum turned around, eyes darkening with anger and heartbreak. But before she could step in, the boys crossed another line. One leaned in close enough for Lily to feel his breath, and whispered, "Bet you wish you could run, huh?" The laughter that followed was vicious, echoing far louder than any sound in the diner. But life has a strange way of sending heroes when they're needed most. The moment the boys burst into another fit of mocking laughter, the ground itself seemed to tremble. Engines roared outside, rattling the diner's windows as a group of bikers pulled into the lot. Leather vests covered in patches glinted in the sun, and their shadows stretched long across the pavement. They were a rugged mix of scruffy beards, tattooed arms, and heavy bootsmen and women who looked like they'd weathered storms you didn't dare ask about. The door swung open with a sharp jingle, and the bikers stepped inside, instantly shifting the air. Their presence filled the small diner like thunder rolling in. The boys at the booth snickered at first, whispering jokes about tough guys on motorcycles. But the leader, a huge man with a long grey beard and warm eyes, barely visible behind dark sunglasses, noticed something they didn't expect. His gaze went straight to Lily. He saw the tear she tried to hide, the way her shoulders tightened, the snickers aimed her way. Without hesitation, he walked over to her table and knelt down until his face was level with hers. The room quieted around them. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said softly, his deep voice unexpectedly gentle. "What's your name?" "Lily," she whispered, barely looking up. "Well, Lily," he said with a small smile, "name's Bear." He tapped his chest. "And I think you're the bravest soul in this whole room." Silence fell like a curtain. Even the waitress froze, coffee pot suspended mid-air. The boys exchanged uneasy glances, suddenly aware that their cruelty hadn't gone unnoticed definitely not by people who tolerated nonsense. One biker, a woman with blazing red hair braided tightly down her back, turned sharply toward the boys, her eyes cold. "You think you're tough?" she asked, her voice like a spark ready to ignite, picking on a girl who's just trying to eat her breakfast. She snapped, her words sharp enough to slice the tension in half. Her voice didn't shake it, carried the kind of authority that makes even grown men straighten their backs. The boys fell silent instantly. Bear rose to his full height, a wall of leather and muscle towering above them. "Why don't you show us just how tough you are?" he said calmly. There was no threat, no shouting, just pure, heavy disappointment that stung more than any anger could. The boys stiffened, their earlier swagger collapsing like a flimsy tent in a storm. No smirks, no whispers, just fear and regret. The diner felt unnervingly still, every ear tuned to the moment. "We were just kidding," the ringleader mumbled, trying to sound casual. Bear leaned closer. "Does it look like she's laughing?" His voice boomed through the diner, shaking whatever pride the boys had left. Their faces flushed deep red. Without another word, they slid out of the booth, tripping over each other as they scrambled to leave. The door slammed behind them, sharp, final, like a judge's gavel ending the case. Lily's mum wiped a tear from the corner of her eye. "Thank you," she whispered, voice trembling with a mix of relief and emotion. But Bear shook his head gently. "Don't thank us. She's the strong one. She wakes up every day and faces a world that doesn't always understand her. That's real strength." And they didn't just stop after running the bullies off. Instead, the bikers pulled up chairs around Lily's table, turning her lonely breakfast into something bright and unforgettable. They leaned in with genuine interest as she shyly opened her sketchbook, revealing drawings of blazing sunsets, roaring motorcycles, and powerful women in leather jackets. The red-haired biker woman leaned closer, eyes widening as she flipped through the pages. The red-haired biker leaned closer, her fierce expression softening into a smile. "That looks exactly like my bike," she said, her voice warm and proud. For the first time that morning, Lily's eyes brightened, truly brightened, like someone had flipped on a light inside her. They ate together, filling the once dense diner with laughter so full and protective it wrapped around Lily like a shield. What moments earlier felt like a battlefield now felt like a safe haven. Even the waitresses, who had quietly watched everything unfold, slipped extra pancakes onto the table on the house, no questions asked. For a little while, Lily wasn't the girl in the wheelchair that people whispered about. She wasn't a target. She was the star, the brave artist, the girl everyone at the table admired. Before leaving, Bear crouched beside her wheelchair again, the leather of his vest creaking softly as he settled at her level. "Lily," he said gently, "the world's always gonna have people who try to pull you down. But remember this, there's more strength in your little finger than those boys have in their whole bodies." He tapped the side of her hand lightly. "And when things get heavy, don't forget, you've got family everywhere. People like us." He placed a small leather patch into her palm, the kind bikers sew onto their vests. Stitched into it were the words, "Ride with courage." Tears gathered in Lily's eyes, shimmering like tiny pearls. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely holding together. Moments later, the bikers fired up their engines and rolled out of the parking lot. Their rumble faded into the distance, leaving behind more than the smell of gasoline. They left behind something far more powerful: hope. Inside the diner, customers whispered among themselves, ashamed of how quiet they'd been when Lily needed someone. They had witnessed courage that morning, not just from the bikers, but from Lily herself, who endured cruelty with a strength they could hardly comprehend. That night, as Lily sketched in her notebook, her pencil moved with new confidence. She didn't draw just motorcycles anymore. She drew a line of protectors standing tall behind her, a silent army of people who believed in her. And for the very first time, she felt it deep in her heart. She wasn't alone.